Welcome to X Talk Podcast, a podcast about sex, relationships, porn, and much more. Join us each week as we explore topics in sex health, relationships, and sex work. Now, here's your host, sex and relationships advisor and pornography expert, Lianne Young.
Hello and welcome back to the Lianne Young Show. Yes, I say the Lianne Young Show because we do the purely woman and I have a great woman for you. And I think this video is so good, I'm going to put it out onto the X Big Talk radio. Now, many people have some idea about sex workers and the sex industry. Now, when it comes to the sex industry, there's many genres. You have porn, you have escorting, you have webcam, you have lap dancing. And people have different views on every kind of genre. Now, is the sex industry one to be looked down on during this COVID-19 crisis, or is it actually going to be the industry that survives the COVID-19 and more people will turn to supplement their income? So I am going to introduce you to the wonderful leading, not only fitness model, Playboy model, and confident woman who is also the world's leading escort from California. Let's introduce the wonderful Amy Taylor to the show. Hello, Amy.
Hi.
How are you? I'm not too bad. How are you?
Well, all things considered, in these crazy times, I'm doing well.
And how is business? I have to ask because obviously you're on lockdown.
Yeah, it's completely on hold for me. I can't speak for everybody, of course, but yeah, it has ceased. We have stay-at-home orders. I'm not one to violate those, and so it's an unplanned vacation, I suppose.
But is it a good vacation where you can actually take time out, relax, and just have some personal time?
Partly, yeah. I have 40 books that most of which are still unread. I always said I didn't have time to read them, and now I have no excuse. I've read some. Yeah, it's part of it is fine. I, take walks in the park, spend more time with my dog, cook more. All of that is nice. But because it's permeated with this undercurrent of the unknown and a bit of fear, both economic and otherwise, it's not as nice as a vacation by choice would have been, obviously.
Oh, do you know what? I was very fortunate. I was in Western Australia and I got one of the last flights back on the 16th of March. So I'd had a month vacation and I managed to fly home to be told that I can't go out. But I was very fortunate. I'd had a month off.
Oh, you did?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was a pure holiday and I was just one of the fortunate ones who had the timing and it just worked out perfect.
That's lucky.
Yeah.
That's lucky.
And I came back to renovate my apartment. I moved into a new apartment and renovated the whole lot during lockdown.
Never a better time to get to that project, huh?
Ah, do you know what? People say, many years ago, now, if I'm correct in thinking you're 40.
43.
Okay, you're 43 and I'm 45. So many years ago,
Mm-hmm.
people used to say, oh, women should be at home. They should be doing the cooking, looking after the children, doing the cleaning, right? And the men would be left to the DIY work. And I soon learned at a young age, and especially the single mum, that I was doing the DIY work and still staying at home.
Wow.
And that's why I became a single parent. And then, like yesterday, I plastered my bathroom ceiling.
Yourself?
Yeah, myself, in a dress.
How did you know how to do that? In a dress? I love that.
YouTube.
How did you know how to do it?
YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Everything's on there, right?
I have tiled, I have plastered ceilings. I have learnt so much from online during lockdown.
I feel like you could have videoed that and monetized it, and there'd be some dude who has a kink who would have paid a lot of money to watch that.
Do you know what? You're so right.
Be a thing somewhere.
Oh my God. I mean, it is. A fetish probably would, and I should have really thought about that rather than just, I could have recuperated some of the money back,
There you go.
So
has it gone well?
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm amazed how good I've always been good at a special kind of DIY, but I didn't know I could do like the real DIY.
Right?
So for me,
See
you,
what you can handle when you have to. That's sort of cool.
that is, do you know what is so right? I couldn't believe that, just, saying I'm not scared, I'm going to do it really worked.
Well, a certain amount of surrender in life is necessary. I struggle a lot with that as a sort of woman who built my business, and I like to feel in control of things, the illusion. This has been a little hard for me, this worldwide situation. But also, as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. When there's no handyman to come plaster your bathroom, you do it. And
Absolutely.
attraction to me to the adult industry is it's often people get into it out of sheer necessity. They're young and they're broke often.
That's totally correct. Yep.
And so they are capable of incredible resourcefulness. I mean, there's some of my colleagues have pivoted so quickly into virtual dates you did an episode with those Bluetooth enabled toys where both people can remotely
From around the world. I could be in Australia and somebody in England and can remote control. It's amazing.
people are using those now and having virtual dates. Okay, it's not the same as in person, but I'm amazed at how necessity, the only thing that will be beautiful and fascinating out of this really horrific time will be to see how people adapt because humans always do. I have no idea how they will, but it's going to be very interesting. You're already seeing bits of that.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And I think that we've been in lockdown for like nearly 4 weeks, and we got told it was getting extended only last week. And people, because there's no direction and there's no kind of tell of when it's going to stop, people have kind of done their own exit from lockdown, but in a very careful way. People, absolutely, more people are out going to the shops, walking.
Me
And
too.
DIY stores have reopened, and people have just said, do you know what? Nobody's given us any directional focus, and therefore I'm going to have my own exit strategy in a very safe way. And that has really started happening.
It's fascinating that it hasn't been, I don't want to speak too soon, but that it hasn't been worse to see that happen. Like, we haven't had sort of this total lack of societal behavior. Most people are being nice. There's not some explosion of crime so far yet.
Yeah, so
I
so far.
wonder when people get so frustrated from the lack of human touch, because I'm all for all this virtual stuff. It's great. But let's be honest, we're creatures that need touch. We need it. And with
Intimacy.
salons closed, spas closed, you can't get a massage. Obviously, sex work being shut down. I wonder how long it'll be till people can no longer stand the lack of human touch if they have nobody.
I
I
don't think it's that far off. I mean, I'm a counsellor as well.
Yeah,
And I look after the adult industry, so I counsel models from the adult industry, and I counsel models and just normal, 9 to 5 work people in normal industries, and or regular industries. I wouldn't even say normal, but regular. And most of them, from both sides of the fence, have been struggling, and they're saying to me, "I need intimacy. It's a desire. It's built within us. It's a natural instinct,
yeah.
and
Monogamy,
people are suffering."
monogamy is looking pretty good now. I know a lot of escorts have sort of hunkered down with their main guy. A lot of people are hunkering down with their spouse and maybe more into, and that's not a bad thing if you get along. I mean, it's funny that who knew that relative exclusivity would look so good. Pandemics seem to do that. What I don't want to see is, and what can happen is because pandemics make people very germ phobic, I don't want to see some sort of proverbial witch burning of sex workers as sort of disease ridden carriers of, because that can happen when people seek blame. I don't see that happening right now, but I'm worried.
Well, we're going to go into that. I mean, first of all, I want to know so much about you, right? Because I've got so many questions for you, and I already know that your advice is going to be fantastic. I've looked at a couple of your interviews. You're a very determined, strong woman, which I really like.
Likewise.
And so tell me a little bit about yourself. I don't even know what to ask right now because I'm like, how did you get to the top of your game? What inspired you? Who inspired you?
Sheer unwillingness to give in, which I've always been a bit pushy and delusional. And so when I was in undergraduate, I was in a sorority, so sort of an American club thing. It's stupid, but it's a house full of girls that live together and party and misbehave. And one of my sorority sisters was an escort and trusted me enough to tell me. And that's where I first heard of it. I had always dated men who provided for me. At the time in college, I didn't date college boys. I was dating a doctor. He had just gotten out of med school. He was 10 years older. And he could take me on vacation to Tahiti while some frat boy couldn't even take me to dinner. So I think my model, my father provided, my mother nurtured. It was a pretty traditional thing. They're still married. They're totally in love. He's considerably older than she is. That was what I saw. And I probably modeled that behavior in the men that I chose and the lifestyle. So I was already kind of, I don't want to say gold diggery, but I've always liked that safety of a man who can financially provide, particularly when I was younger and poorer than now. Depends on what happens with the global recession. I might be better.
But no, like yourself, I'm into older men, always have been, and it is a security. I mean, my last boyfriend was 63, and it's
Yeah. You don't mind?
what, dating a 63-year-old?
Yeah.
No, they have wisdom, they have experience, they can. I feel safe,
Yeah.
and
Me too.
it's just something about me that's I need interesting conversation. So, how old were you when you were undergraduate?
So I went to college from 17 to 21, and I was 19 when this girl told me. I had a boyfriend who was providing for me already, so I didn't do it then. But I then went to graduate school in Los Angeles. He and I broke up. I suddenly was lonely and broke without him, and I remembered this that she had told me at that point 3 or 4 years earlier, and was like, "Oh, I'm going to do that." So I looked for an agency like she had worked for in San Francisco. I was in LA. No one would hire me. They hired Playboy centerfolds, and I had at that time a bigger nose and smaller breasts than I do now. And I was young, but I wasn't Los Angeles pretty. I was, a San Francisco 9, but an LA 6 at best. One agency told me, this owner, she was very nice, and she said, "Oh, you're super smart and guys are going to love you. You're a grad student and you're cool. You don't need an agency. You can do this on your own." And I was like, "Well, how do you do that?" And she showed me a few websites, and I began the search, spent a couple weeks searching, spent my last few bucks on some photos, and picked a name, got a phone, and the rest was history. And it went largely well. A couple of bad things happened. My first client was lovely, and I saw him for 10 years, and we went all over the world together. My second client was a police officer. That night was not so good. I mean, he was great till he wasn't. Yeah, he fooled me, and that sucked. It was expensive and painful and changed my opportunities forever because of what happened to me legally. It actually forced me to stay in the work because the rest of my life has been shaped by the fact that they did that to me.
So, what did they do to you? Was it the legal side?
Yeah, I got arrested and had a record forever, and that has cost me opportunities every day of my life since, and it will till the day I die.
My wow, and like
America.
it's got to be America, because I know many escorts in the UK, and and even in Ireland, people would say, is like more dodgy, I suppose, or more not legally binding or too strict. I'm not quite sure how to put the words. But over there, if escorts are going over, they register with a Garda for their own safety, but they don't get arrested.
Well, I mean, it's a word game here. So I thought I had met a nice older man who would help take care of me, pay for graduate school, and that I could date. And I liked him. And instead I was fooled and I was thrown in jail. And had I had the money I have now, I would have fought hard. And maybe I would have won, or at least been really difficult for them to crush. But I was broke and young and scared and stupid, and they steamrolled me. And he fooled me. He lied. And he got to further his career by making out with a cute young girl and then throwing me behind bars. I'm sure that was fun for him that day. A lot easier than going after a real criminal. And it was what it was. But the only good thing that came out of it is I learned that people don't always tell the truth. I was very naive. I'm a professor's child. I came didn't come from the streets. I thought people were honest. And I learned that night that people can lie. And the usefulness of that lesson probably saved my life, because the next liar could have been a murderer, right?
Completely.
So I learned to check out. I learned to believe, to trust but verify everything anybody ever said to me since. And that probably saved my life. So even bad experiences, as we're all going through on Earth right now, can end up really useful if you take some lessons from them.
That's it. It's lessons. It's experience. It's lessons, and you gain wisdom. I mean, there is a positive out of a negative.
Sometimes painfully so, but you do.
So I've got to ask, how long were you dating him for, and how did you meet him?
Which?
The police officer, because people will be at home going, how did that happen?
A lovely dinner, and we talked on the phone several times before as we planned things. He told me that he owned a company that was not true, and all I would have had to do was check, and I would have not gone to meet him if I had known, but I was stupid and believed what he said and naive. And we had a lovely dinner, and then we went up to a hotel suite, and then one thing was sort of leading to another, and then the door busted open, and I was thrown on my face, and a gun was put to my head, and I was cuffed. And then it was 2 hours interrogation, and then it was jail for a few hours, and then it was lawyers for months and a lot of expense. So I had to keep working because I didn't have the money to pay for the lawyers. And I got mad, I wasn't ashamed. I said, why? I met somebody who was nice, and I was nice, and I was hoping we would date and we both would help each other out. And how is that evil? How is that evil? In most of the civilized world, it's not considered evil. And I'm not sorry, and I'm not ashamed, and I don't think I'm a bad person. And I know you want me to be ashamed of myself, but I'm not. And I got mad.
Oh, rightly so.
Well, I just think I was hoping someday our country would change. They say the majority of people in our country think it should be decriminalized, but I don't know now with the pandemic if people will go more conservative. Disease sometimes makes people more conservative in their behavior, so we'll see.
I'm fascinated by your story. I mean, I work as a voluntary outreacher for the Metropolitan Police Sexual Violence Unit here in London, and I deal with. I don't know if you've heard of National Ugly Mug.
Yeah.
And I deal with adultwork.com.
Yeah.
And both of them work beside the police, and the police do not look down on us, and they're just like, they're so open, and they talk to us, and we learn all about legalities. We keep women safe.
A girlfriend of mine in Canada just the other day had a threatening guy and was able to kick him out and call the cops and file a report, and they were able to apprehend him. And in this country, you can't do any of that. They would like us to just die. They would like us to be thrown away. And, we're a joke. Dead hooker is a joke in America.
But right? it just doesn't make sense because, to me, I mean, I'm from the adult industry. 20 years ago, I was a porn queen of England, worked in Los Angeles. And before my adult career, I was a probation officer.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I knew the law, and I got into pornography, and I felt completely safe. There was no dodgy hotel thing. There was no dodgy anything. Yeah. And I was maybe I was one of the fortunate ones, but I was also the one that had my head together, done the research, done the check-in, and I didn't take drugs. And that, and I think that's highly important. And then, and then I went over to Los Angeles to work, and I never understood how, when the industry was saying, if you ever do escorting, you can't stay in the adult industry. And I never understood the difference. And I was like, okay, that, I wasn't escorting. I was a top adult actress. We didn't have sex outside work, because you can't, because, you have to keep health, safety, hygiene is so much important. But it's the same as escorting.
Well, most porn stars do escort, they just lie.
They do, yeah.
That employ almost all of them, not all, but most, and they just lie. I think it's a liability issue. America is a country of lawyers, and porn companies don't want to be legally responsible for disease spread, nor do they want to be held culpable for knowing that they're involved in something illegal. Even if it's a law no one agrees with, it's still a law. It's very stupid. But we are being held hostage by the minority who's very conservative and sex phobic. They are not the majority of people, but they're very vocal. They spend a lot of money in political lobbying, and they're holding America hostage because the majority doesn't agree with them, but they're powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, in England, I don't think it's been. I mean, I only returned to England to live full time a couple of years ago, and I still work with, around different countries in media. And, I get to interview all kind of women, actresses. In Australia, they're very cool about escorting in brothels. In England, not so much. I think that if you're independent, that's cool. Agencies, obviously, with the internet taking over, it's like a no-go. And I think the main thing with the police is safety. Fine, what is a female safety, and what would you say is the most important thing, or what did you learn along the way about safety? Ha-
well, so we have in America, because we're not allowed to do anything openly, we have our covert ways. We have apps where we talk about bad clients. We can't tell our healthcare providers that we're sex workers because our insurance will get canceled. So you have to lie. But there are clinics you can go to and get the tests and the medications you need. The adult clinics provide those and don't ask any questions about your lifestyle choices. So, humans are going to human. We find a way.
yeah.
um, but it's a mess. And of course, if the industry was legitimized, all of that would be better. We could deal with harmful men. We could collect for non-payment. We could call the police when we're getting hurt. You could regulate the health thing, and like the porn industry does, and ensure workers are healthy, and therefore clients would be safer. You could have brothels. You could everything would be better. But that would involve a shift in morality that America refuses to make, which would be to accept that married men often don't want to be monogamous, that some women are okay being a little bit slutty, which is also sort of not allowed, but we know it's true. Uh, that women can trade on their sexuality to survive economically. The young and the poor have always done this and always will. We would have to admit a lot of things in this country to be safer. The safety payoff would be huge, but the culture shift is for some just too big of a leap to take. I don't know why. I'm not sure if it's religion or it's just a general discomfort with sex. When I do mainstream modeling, I often have to hide my opinions on Twitter from the magazine editor, because if I even speak out pro sex work decriminalization, a magazine editor will refuse me and it's not because they hate sex work, it's because they're selling a magazine to the public and they don't want to get flack from the readership who may disagree with me. So these are often liability issues, right?
I agree with you 1,000%, because it's not the publication. I mean, I work for several media companies. I deal with lots of journalists and media houses, and if they want to cover the sex industry, they're like, what's a unique angle? How, where is it? But a lot of them don't like to talk about it. And I'm like, why not? And they said, it's not because we don't want to talk about it. It's just we can't because of our viewers. And I said, but your viewers are the ones that are at home watching porn, getting a false impression. And they mean porn's not wrong, you know?
It's legal. Everybody uses it. Everybody watches it. But I don't know why we're still there's the world that we aspire to, and then there's the world that is, right? And there's a lot of people who are still aspirational, that it's man, woman, 2 children, suburbs, the home and the picket fence. And I think a lot of people are afraid that if they don't control everything, that we'll get farther and farther away from that, and that will somehow be terrible. I don't think it will be, but we don't. People are uncomfortable with that, which is different, right? People have always been.
I think, I mean, I'm British, we have like this stiff upper lip, and, it's like when people find out my past, or who or what I do and who I am, they're just like, oh, they might grab their partner by the arm. And I'm like, why in God's name would I want to be with your partner? Number one, I I used to work the sex industry and I got paid for it, so I wasn't going to give it away for free.
Never.
Never,
I don't
ever.
want it.
I don't want to sleep with your partner. Do not, if a man chatted me up in a bar, I'm not going to take them home. And it says a lot about relationships where their partner can't openly discuss with their partner that they fancy something different. I mean, I always refer it to my first ever radio job, my first ever radio like interview. Somebody said to me, so why do you think you like sex? I said, well, would you want to go home to the same meal of egg and chips every night? And they're like, no. And I said, well, occasionally you're going to like a Chinese takeaway or an Indian, or you want to go down to Subway, or you want to go, for a drive-through. It's no different than sex.
Yep. Yeah.
We have desire.
But we're sort of terrified of women who admit this. Women gained their status in the world by having children and becoming a sexless saint, the Virgin Mary, the wife who's good and not very sexual. That was safe for men. It's not threatening, right? She's not going to cheat on you if she doesn't even like sex. And that was our status. You push out a kid and you're suddenly a saint. And a lot of women would like that to continue to be because that was our way of getting status. And so anybody who subverts that, who fucks like a man, who likes occasional sexual variety, that is somebody who's not behaving like a proper woman. And I think other women...
I'm on that list.
And other women are very uncomfortable by that because you're sort of breaking the rules. And then what is female status anymore if you're not doing what we're supposed to do to achieve female status, which is get married, be good, and have a kid. And women police each other's behavior the same way men do. Like a man who's emotional and cries, other men will really pick on him sometimes that he's not a real man if he is like that. And women will police sluts as, get in line, be like the rest of us, or you're not a regular woman. I think it's this sort of policing.
I hear you. I think it is, and I actually find it really bizarre that people want to be clones of other people. They want women to be the clone of one another. They want guys to be the clone of one another and relationships to be cloned. When I don't want to be in a relationship like my married next door neighbour who's been married for 30 years, may have 2 children and no longer have sex. Right. I would rather be really honest and say, okay, well, I haven't found a guy that I'm really interested in, but along the journey, I still need sex and intimacy.
Yeah. Well, the desire for homogeny, some people find that a lot safer if everything's predictable and it's easier to govern. It's easier to write laws if everybody behaves the same way. The ancient Romans were very into society being the same. I'm a sort of Marxist, Trotskyite liberal. I like variety. I live in a city that's very diverse. I like it that way. You like the variety in people. That's why you love to interview all kinds of souls.
I love it.
Some people, that really terrifies them. One of my neighbors walked to the Starbucks on the corner and he saw a man wearing a tutu, ballet.
Yeah.
And my neighbor was very uncomfortable with that. And I asked him, why do you care? So guy wearing a tutu, like who cares? And he's like, I just don't like that. I'm like, well, I think it's great. He should wear whatever the hell he wants to wear. If he wants to wear a tutu, that's cool.
I agree with you, right? It's like, I don't need I don't need people to accept me or like wait around for them to make sure that everybody likes me. I've got if you don't like me, turn over. That's my attitude, and people said to me, oh, but why did you get into porn? Were you abused as a child? Were you did you have daddy issues? Did you have whatever? And I'm like, do you know what? I can still remember clearly why I got into porn. It's like I'd left the father of my daughter, and I realised I'd never had an orgasm. And then I suddenly just found this whole new world, and I managed to learn what sex was, and it wasn't missionary style. I was so happy, And then I wanted to know more. I didn't even watch a porn movie till I was 22.
Did you know when you had not had an orgasm, you must have known other people did, or had you not even heard of it? Or
nobody even discussed it. Do you know what? I was still under the assumption that 2 people had to have an orgasm together to make a baby. So I had just assumed.
Did you have sex education in America? That sounds like really bad sex ed.
Oh, no, I had a grainy black and white sperm leaves the penis, goes inside a vagina, and 9 months later there's a baby. And then, and the religious teacher then asks you, does anybody have any questions? Well, you're in a class of like 30 odd people, boys and girls, that you would never dream of putting your hand up.
Oh, sure.
And then I settled down really young. And yes, I'd had some, I'll call it like recreational sex. And I enjoyed it. But then I was so young, and then I wanted to be, at 17, oh my God, all I wanted to do was fall in love and meet my future husband, unbeknown that I'd be bored after 6 months, let alone 60 years. And I literally just, settled down, had 2 children. And then lo and behold, I decided to be a single parent because I was in a loveless relationship, or a relationship I didn't want to be in. And then when I left my ex, local people from my town said to me, what do you think you're doing? What about the children? What do you think you're doing? And I'm like, I'm making myself happy. Is there a problem with that? And people found it really hard that I'd done something that I chose to do.
Did you just hit some breaking point where you had to look out for your own happiness, or were you at all scared that that was sort of the wrong thing to do? Or
No, do you know what? I think what happened is the dad had finished work, and then we had a 2-week holiday planned to go and visit family, north of England. And he didn't come home, and he'd gone to the pub and spent all his salary. And so I was really annoyed because my auntie wanted to meet my new daughter and my son more. And I just went anyway. I actually just went, and I made £60 last me like just over a week driving a car and looking after the 2 kids. And I went to see my auntie. And when I was with my auntie, it's for the day of mobile phones. And she said to me, he's been ringing already asking where you are and demanding to speak to you. I said, I don't want to speak to him. This is what he's done.
yeah.
And she sat me down. She goes, in a year's time, do you want to be where you are now? Because, life's hopefully going to be long for you. And I said, I don't know what to do. And she goes, well, if you don't want to be in this situation in a year's time, this is what you need to do. And from that day, I just became wise. And I went home and I told him I wanted to break up. And I said, I said, I don't want to be with you anymore. I'm no longer in love with you. Obviously, the children are ours, so we share. But I'm not in love with you, and I don't want to be with you anymore. And that was back 20 odd years ago. That I can't believe my auntie gave me the strength, and I'm just so relieved, because even my own mum and other people just found it very strange. Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to cope? And I can cope really well. And then I've discovered who I was, and then I started having recreational sex, and then always safe. And
Yeah.
but it was just with people who were comfortable with who they were. And for the first time, I actually felt that I was able to be me and not have to please other people before myself.
That's a place a lot of women have to get to. I pity those who never do, but it's an amazing sort of chrysalis like butterfly transformation when you realize you're not the person your parents told you to be. You're not the person that first love or husband or boyfriend told you to be. I had been with one man when I first became an escort. I almost married him, and I just knew, I didn't know I wanted to become an escort, but I knew I wanted to go to graduate school. I wanted to earn my own money.
Yep.
It was nice that he provided for me, but I wanted it to be mine, and then I could decide how to spend it. He would give me an allowance, but then tell me what to go buy at the store. And I felt like I was only living half of a life. And it wasn't even just about sex, although that was part of it. I wanted to live a full existence like men get to. I could travel on my own and go pursue the field of study and the field of work I wanted, and fuck who I wanted, and I remember the first time I bought a home, they asked where the husband was. I said, no, the apartment is me on the mortgage. It's my money. I made it fair and square, and it's me signing these documents. And
Yeah.
back when I did that, this is 17 years ago, there were very few single women buying homes alone, and they didn't know what to make of that. Now it's more common. But you have to get to a point where you just won't take it anymore. And I don't know that I made the right choice becoming an escort, but I knew that doing what I was doing was not tolerable in the same way it wasn't for you. that I had to head off in a different direction because the status quo would break me.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
I said that she loves my father, but I asked my mother about if she had any regrets in her life. And my own mother told me I never earned my own money. I wished I had earned some money of my own. And she never did. And in that generation, women rarely ever did. And she said it made her feel like a child most of her life.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, you're being carried. It's almost like you're being carried rather than being independent.
maybe, and being an escort, okay, you're still sort of being carried by your customers, but at least once that money's mine, it's mine.
Yeah. Oh, I can still remember getting home after my first ever porno and being able to get home and pay all my bills that I'd accumulated as a single parent. And I even had money left over to buy pizza for my young children. I was ecstatic. I was out of debt and I had no one to answer to, and I had done it.
Yeah.
And I was
And,
happy with
and
what
you
I
have great sex too. I mean,
I
what's
had
not to?
great sex. Do you know? Oh my God, it was amazing. My first ever video was for a company called Private, and it was totally different to what somebody would imagine going for their first ever porn shoot, but it was great. So, well, they were just older.
Who?
But the performers, I just thought they were going to be a young 20-year-old or something, and they weren't. They were like 40 something, but it was great sex.
I mean, older people usually know what they're doing more.
Oh, loved it. I had one of my best movies. My first ever movie. I still refer to.
Yeah.
I was so free. I'm like a little bird, a little butterfly that I don't ever kind of stay anywhere too long. I like fluttering around and doing my own thing, and sitting on whoever's perch I want to, and but I look after myself.
Yeah. When I think it's to your point you were saying earlier about how in these COVID lockdown times, people are inching out. People are wearing their masks, but they're pushing because humans, we are a species that wants to live with some risk and some adventure and have funny stories. I want to be an old lady with a lot of inappropriate stories, and I think I'm gonna.
Oh my God, if you're anything, I don't even know where to start with mine. People ask me sometimes, and I'm like, you don't even want to know because I don't even.
My average Tuesday was the wildest night you've ever had back in the. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's what I don't like though is that in sex work sometimes that can hem you in that because you've lived this way, you are never capable of living any other way. I have dozens of retired girlfriends who are business tycoons, sometimes wives and mothers, sometimes not. They're doing other things. That's their choice. And they also are capable of being very different 10, 20 years later. And that's okay too.
But it's different chapters.
And it's all okay, right? We shouldn't. I really dislike this idea that you are forever retired escort, retired porn star. If in fact you don't want to be. If you want to be, great. I'm okay with my choices. I'm not ashamed and I'm not sorry. But other friends of mine would like to close this chapter and be someone else. And that should also be allowed, right?
Yeah, if people want a bar to just move on, they should be able to. I mean, you don't keep going back to the last chapter. You're supposed to move on. Or, I mean, like myself, I mean, I'm qualified in international business, health and safety, sex education, and although I haven't been in front of a camera as a adult performer for, gosh, nearly 20 years, I still use my past experience and use it in today. So there is a future and a past. When, society keeps saying, oh, you'll be left on the shelf. I'm still looking for this shelf because I'm not seeing this floating shelf of all these single people and people who worked in the sex industry. I'm not seeing it. And I'm not seeing anybody be held back apart from the people who let them themselves.
Yes. Well, and 45, I mean, frankly, you're not that old. I mean, I live in LA. 45 is nothing here. And we're delusional in LA. We think we're hot till we're 85. And oddly, some people here are really old and really good looking. It's weird.
I've seen some, oh my God, Marina Del Rey.
You see it in London. You see it. 45 is literally not that old. But the porn industry can be a little bit youth focused, although less and less so. They're even realizing that a lot of people like a mature performer.
Absolutely. I mean, I was interviewing Veronica of Love. And I adore the woman. She's older. She's like the MILF market. And I think it's great. I love women who have more of the confidence, who aren't when I look back at my younger days of doing porn, I was wild. I had so much energy, and you could tell me to do something, and I'm like, yeah, 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 and I wouldn't think of the consequences. Right? 20 years later, they're on the internet for everybody. And now, I wouldn't make adult movies now. I wouldn't even send texts or videos to a partner on a phone. Never, no, I won't do that. I'll do a live thing, but I would never. I don't send dirty pictures. I'm not. I know somebody who's been catfished quite bad, and I'm very cautious of it. And plus, they can go on the internet. Why do they need a picture?
Right.
I'm a bit like that until I really get to trust them, because trust needs to be earned. You don't ever just trust anybody. People have to earn it. But it's
Right.
so. What did you ever like? What were you, as a young girl? What did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
I did become what I thought I was going to be. So I always liked science. I was good at biology and math. And in my undergrad, that's what I studied, molecular biology. And so for 1.5 years after Berkeley, that's where I went to undergrad, I worked in a biotech lab in Marin County, California, north of San Francisco. I worked on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases. So diseases of oxidative stress, aging related diseases. And we worked on mouse models and worm models. And it was intellectually very interesting, but isolating. Entire weeks. Sometimes I'd barely see another human being. And I had a really hard time with animal sacrifice. You have to kill a lot of animals. And that is the way that biotech research is done in every lab, everywhere in the world, every day.
Absolutely.
But it was hard on my soul. Escorting never gave me nightmares, but that job gave me nightmares. And I made $29,500 a year, and I worked 7 days a week because the machines and the experiments run when they run. You can't just have office hours. You have to go in when mice need injecting or a machine is running. So it owned my whole life. 7 days a week, I had no life, and I was making no money. So that's when I was miserable. And I applied to graduate school and went to business school and pivoted. So I did become a scientist, which was what I always wanted to do, and I hated it. So
Yep, absolutely.
you think studying something is different than doing it for a living. I wish I had interned and learned earlier because I had to go get a graduate degree since I was only qualified to do molecular biology, and I found out I disliked it as a lifestyle. I disliked the pay and the horrible stuff you have to do. So that was a mistake, but I loved learning it, and I am never happier when I'm learning. I still would like to go finish my PhD. I don't know if I ever will, but my parents are academics. My dad's a professor. I enjoy learning anything, like anything.
Yeah.
So as long as my mind is being expanded, that I'm a happy girl.
Oh, completely. I mean, how long have you been escorting?
On and off, 16 years. I've taken a couple years off a few times. And lately, I've been spending the last 3 years almost totally with one guy. And before that, the 4.5, 5 years before that, I almost saw one other person. So in the last almost decade, it's been very mellow. The beginning was wilder, and you're finding all your friends, you're seeing lots of different people. That was the mood I was in when I had broken up with that guy and was broke and lonely and had never been with another guy, and I really wanted to date a lot of guys, and boy did I.
Well, you got to go through them to find the right one.
This is it, and I wanted to have some fun. And then you kind of, for me, every few years I like to get deeper with somebody. I wouldn't call it love because it's still somebody who's providing for me, and I would not date them if they weren't. And it's not a shame of sexual volume or sluttiness. It's just I like a little bit of depth. And then usually for me, when that ends and I'm kind of heartbroken, then I like to go be a slut for a while again. And
Yeah. I hear you go. I'm a girlfriend. I'm feeling you, because people know I date older guys and they're normally wealthy. And that's not because I want to take all their money. I don't want them to, I just want to be, if they want me to be in their life, 24/7 and want me to go on all these lovely holidays and everything else, which I do enjoy, I can't get a normal job, a regular job, 9 to 5, getting up at 7, getting home at 7, and still go on all these luxury holidays and stuff. And I like my holidays. I like a job where I can take it with me. And I've always dated older guys, and yeah, they've provided, a few of them have provided for me, and I thought it was great. But then also, I wasn't able to go and get a regular job. But
Yeah.
to me, that was more like people to say, "Oh, you have your sugar daddy," And do you think that's where you are now, or do you think
Yeah.
that's
That's kind of what ends up happening if you do this long enough. You find your favorites and you narrow down the numbers. And if they're wealthy enough to afford to provide for you to a greater extent, then you just sort of narrow it. That happens a lot. I know girls who've married the guy because he was, and then to your point about not working, my main steady, he's like, I don't want you working because I want you available when I have time. The busy
that's
guy.
right? Yep.
I
And
don't
I
want you tired and not having a manicure and not energetic and happy. So
yeah,
he has plenty of money for both and for lots of other people. And so he's like, I can easily provide for you. And then I liberate your schedule so that when I want to take a trip, when we used to be allowed to take trips in the old times.
oh yeah. Oh my God, I can't wait. I'm supposed to be in Los Angeles right now.
Oh, next time
Yeah.
you come, have to have a drink.
Oh, definitely.
But that's it. They provide for you just because it allows you to be available. And wealthy men have always had wives and mistresses and concubines, and they have the resources to provide and bend people's schedules to their will. And the reason, I don't know why people hate that. First of all, it's never going to change. Secondly, I assume they hate it because of envy, right? Because some of these men have a lot more resources than other people. And yeah, that's enviable, sure. But life is not always equal. Welcome to the
Well,
world.
I don't think life ever has been equal, because when you look back, years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago, the women stayed at home and
Yeah.
the men went to work and earn the money. So I don't really see what much difference there is between being a full-time girlfriend to a man that is willing and desires that.
Many have said
And
that we are basically playing the housewife for pay, except
exactly, I mean,
for
I'm not being funny. Nothing in this world is for free. Nothing, right? Every single buddy in this world is paying for sex in some way or another.
indeed.
And with the escorting, as I see it, is they're not actually paying for the sex; they're paying for the convenience to say goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is just sex, and then they can leave with no guilty feeling, and they're both getting enjoyment. It's a mutual business transaction.
Yeah, and most people have no problem with it. Those who do probably just shouldn't do it, right? I mean,
Absolutely. I'm a counsellor for the adult industry, and there's some people I say this industry is not suited for you, and you really need to do some self investment on yourself. And I'll provide them different avenues to go out and discover who they are. And years later, people say to me, thank you so much. I've done this and I've done that, and I just like that. You know,
yeah.
but 90% of the people that are working in escorting or pornography are exceptionally happy. Their choice, not doing it because of a suitcase pimp, and we all know a suitcase pimp exists. It's, a partner who puts their partner into sex work. Happens all the time.
Oh, that can be very bad. In my industry, when you are successful and a marketable commodity that people want, there will and did for me come along usually men, sometimes women who want to manage your career, take a cut of your profit. And if you say no to them, they will try to destroy you.
Oh,
That
yep.
happens a lot. They don't want you to be able to operate on your own and keep all your money. And they'll punish you if you try.
Yeah,
So
and that's insecurity on their side.
they want control of
They
the
want
industry.
control. They want to own you.
Yeah, I had an online pimp. He owned a review site, and he said, "I'm going to corner the market so that if you don't have reviews on my site, you will not be able to get any clients." And he called women his inventory.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's. I mean, that kind of behavior. I mean, as I mentioned to you, off camera, I'm helping with the adult work, into Australia, because they're opening up in Australia, and it's an online platform which is phenomenal for independent escorts and phone sex chat or even uploading erotica.
Yeah, they have all forms of sex work, right? It's awesome.
Absolutely, they've got the most amazing platform where everybody, everything is there, and they've also helped, if there's something illegal going on, they actually give the information to the police. So it's
Good.
yeah, so they're not going to let underage, and it's all monitored. It's not one of these agencies that are going to take 30% and then try and run your career, but also if you piss them off one day, they're going to ruin your career.
The difficulty is, though, to be honest, there are women who enter sex work often very young, sometimes not super savvy or smart, and without a manager, they will get into real trouble, danger.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yep, absolutely.
And so how they call that person a pimp, but they're not always evil. There are pimps or managers who they put the girl in college. They help her get off drugs. Yes, because she's more marketable if she's healthier and prettier, but also it's not always bad for her. So that is not always the case. But there are managers who are not evil. They're not taking too much of a cut. So I don't know. What do you do with those people who are not that bad? It's like we were talking about earlier, there's a nuance in human existence. It's not pimps equal bad, clients equal sleazy. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
It can be, but in my country, they've just decided sex work equals bad. And
Well, going on to that, right? Because you're on lockdown as well, and Donald Trump has refused anybody that works within the sex industry will not get help, even though the people that work in the sex industry pay so much tax.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he give them all their tax back?
For 20 years almost.
I'm just in shock. I mean, especially because, I still think it's a personal issue with him because of the Stormy Daniels situation.
Perhaps.
And you're American, so you can't really discuss it.
He's paying the bills for all of his wives forever. He's always liked gold diggers. It's how he gets pretty women. Because if you look like him, you're not going to get pretty women without paying them.
Oh my God! No, I don't. We float a duck in London that looks like him. That's. Oh yeah. They have this massive blow up inflatable, I think it's like a baby Trump. I thought it was a duck, but I think it's a baby Trump, and it's got a nappy on, and they fly it. It's quite funny. But how are you supposed to survive now? Because adult work's got, you can't do.
He doesn't hate sex workers. He's been part of it, but his base is the religious right who claims to hate sex workers. Spoiler, most of our clients are conservative white men who are church-going Christians in America. So they actually find this more fun if it's secret and they're lying about it. And what they like, if you watch the Handmaid's Tale TV show or read the book,
no,
they like a world where their wife is the saint who's sexless at home, and then they can go have these wanton, slutty women but not tell the truth about it and go home to their wife and pretend to be Christian, God-fearing, conservative, but have this secret. That's what they like, and it's more exciting to them if they can lie about it. They don't want to tell the truth about it.
God, you've just described the Bible, I think.
More fun if you lie. It's more exciting if it's forbidden, right? Most of our clients.
Absolutely. People like to break boundaries and rules and regulate. It's what we do.
Well, it makes it boring if you just admit. That's why clients hate the word sex work. They don't want to be thought of as work because they don't like that. And they don't want it to be legitimized because that takes all the fun out of it, right?
It's pleasure. To me, I think it's pleasure. It's about having a good time, releasing pent-up energy. It's human nature to release semen and you got to admit, orgasms are pretty good for your health.
Oh, yeah.
It's the biggest stress reliever, So how are you? Obviously you're on lockdown. You can't work. What does the future hold for you?
Luckily, as a veteran who socked away some money, I'll be more okay than most, at least for a while, I guess. But yeah, the ones that they can't get any of this small business assistant because, think about it. It's not rocket science. They're going to lie. They're going to create a company that's not sex work, consulting or whatever, and they're going to go after small business assistant in that fake. So when you hem people in, they always find a way. So they'll just do what they've always done. Well, they'll lie to the government and not be honest about sex work. And then you can't get any good data on STDs and health because sex workers will not tell the truth that they are in sex work because they won't be willing to be part of a database because things like this happen, that they suddenly can't get government assistance when everything's shut down. So the government just shot themselves in the foot because their unwillingness, once again, to be honest about real human behavior is going to make more lying, more closeting, and then you're going to get worse and worse data because nobody's telling the truth. I mean, this is why polls don't work. This is why data is so faulty. These models of COVID were such utter garbage because if you force people to lie, they're going to lie, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, it's survival.
I mean, right?
It's
Human.
we're human. Yeah, we're human. It's absolutely normal. I mean, like I said, I mean, you know, covering the adult industry, I know how much tax these people pay.
Yeah.
And I am just absolutely shocked that that the government would take their tax to benefit others and give it back to the country. But yet when those same people that popped up some of the country, they're now left to just chuck to the curb. I'm just amazed.
If they go after you, they can freeze your assets and just take it.
I mean, it's a whole new. But like I said, in Australia it's different. In England it's different, and you know,
we're trying here. We have public support, but we're trapped between the religious right that has this moral dilemma with they do it, but they won't admit it.
Yeah.
Then we're trapped with the far left radical feminists who think that we're terrible victims of abuse and that any man who ever wants to sleep with a woman is Satan.
Yeah.
So we're unfortunately trapped in by both sides that hate us. It's not a good place. It's not a good place to be, right?
I don't. What I don't get is that, you know, sex is not about reproduction anymore. It's about enjoyment. It's healthy. What isn't healthy is suppressing emotions and suppressing desires and needs. You know, we have to be able to express ourselves, and right now people are unable to. And I also think that many people are going to consider turning to the sex industry, and especially escorting, to survive after, you know, to try and get their lives back together. What would your advice be to the women that are considering turning to the escort world now because they've lost their jobs and need to get their life back?
Yeah, I understand. That's where I was almost 20 years ago. I get it. Please do all the research you can. There's so much stuff out there. We were talking about plastering via YouTube. YouTube is great. There's tons of escorts talking about what it's like to work in one. You can look at our websites and look at everything we do. Message me and ask. I cannot tell you what to do in your career. It's illegal, but I'll help anybody stay alive because I want you to suffer less than I did in the beginning. There are lots of us out there. There are paid mentors, but do your research. Because in math, there's something called the Poisson distribution. It's something that's very unlikely, but it's dire if it happens. So like a lightning strike or plane crash. This business follows the Poisson distribution. 99% of the time, nothing bad will happen, but the one will kill you. So you have to, kind of like a pilot in a plane, prepare for something that may never happen. Because if you don't, you will die. I'm not kidding. So you have to screen. There is no money worth taking your life in your hands. If you do that, the murderer will come because they do email us all the time and they're looking for the one who's sloppy enough to meet him, and you cannot let him through. So, but I'm not to scare you. 99% of guys are wonderful and you have a great time. You just have to not meet the one, right?
And that's in normal society as well.
Oh, dating, regular dating, if you're not being paid, it's the same.
Yeah, so, it's no difference.
Details, meet in public, do your screening, check guys out, background, all that's online. We have places where you can learn it all. Come to us, veterans. We can help. And then obviously take the regular precautions. If you choose, not because you're paid, you decide to be intimate with somebody of your own volition, not because of money, be safe. And Don't let anybody mistreat you. Douchebags are going to stay douchebags. If he's bad in the beginning, he's never going to get better. Go find somebody else.
Amy, that's such amazing advice. Just tell the listeners where they can find you and how to contact you.
So I have my official website, amytaylor.com, and I'm on Twitter, amytaylor1, and I'm on Instagram, amytaylorla.
Amy, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. You're like a woman who is my mirror image. I just absolutely love it. Absolutely brilliant. It's been a pleasure having you on here, and I'm going to be over in Los Angeles soon. I'm going to take you up on meeting up for a drink, and I'll also introduce you to some friends over in LA that I know of that may be really good connections for you.
I would love that. I can't wait to meet you in person when all this nonsense ends.
Can't wait. I should be there now. Hopefully I'll get there as soon as possible.
Okay.
Amy, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. God bless you, lovely.
Likewise. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to X Talk Podcast with Lianne Young. Make sure to visit our website, skyhawkafterdark.com, where you can subscribe to our show in iTunes, Google Podcast, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too.